What's going on, guys? Sophizzticated here, and today we are finally bringing you our completed beginner's guide to Fizz. This video is going to be definitely more geared towards your newer Fizz players, people who have less than 50 games on Fizz, or someone who either played against Fizz or played with a Fizz and saw him and thought that that champion should be fun, or would be fun rather. And so this video is for you. So what we're going to go over today in this video, we're going to go over his champion identity. We're going to tell you kind of a little bit about Fizz, what he is, and how you should be operating him. We're going to go over his abilities, all the way from his passive to his ult. We're going to give a brief rundown of all the abilities, how they interact with the champion, and how you should be using them. We're going to go over his basic combos, stuff that all the way from level 1 up to level 6, and then what to be doing concurrently throughout the course of a game with Fizz. And then lastly, we're going to go over runes and build pass. A couple basic ones. There are some more niche ones. We are going to be coming out with an advanced Fizz guide later on in the season. That's going to go over a lot more in depth on like your Fizz top, your Fizz support, Fizz jungle potentially, a lot of more of the off meta stuff with Fizz. But yeah, so we're going to jump right into it. We're going to go into Fizz's champion identity. Fizz is labeled as an AP melee assassin with extremely high mobility and high burst damage. And basically what that means is you're able to jump around a lot because you have 2 spells in your kit that are dashes. With a flash coupled on top of that, you are just able to get around the map very, very efficiently. And then you also deal a lot of upfront damage, like very, very high burst damage. So what we're going to do now is just go over into his abilities. We're going to start with his passive. Fizz's passive is Nimble Fighter. Basically, Fizz is ghosted, takes 4 reduced damage from all sources. That number will go up on an AP percentage for every 100 AP you get. And what that means, Fizz is ghosted. Basically, Fizz doesn't get creep blocked, whether it be from minions, enemy champions, allied champions, or jungle camps. So in League of Legends, you will have unit collision. So Fizz just ignores that unit collision. So if we weren't playing Fizz, as I'm typing or clicking right here, instead of running right through that target dummy, our character would be routed and we would walk around it to get to this point. But with Fizz, you just walk right through units. It's compared to a lot of the more recent, passives, nothing crazy, but it definitely is effective. And when you would utilize this is if you're taking a bad trade with someone in mid lane and there's your minion waves right here, you take a bad trade, you just make sure to run right through the minions. So that way, if the enemy champion paths the same way as you, they're gonna have to walk around those minions and it might end up saving you. Same thing with a gank. If you're getting ganked, just make sure to not run outside of your minions, run through them. I mean, because you want to utilize that ghosted passive. Fizz's Q is Urgent Strike. It's basically just a dash. You dash to your enemy, deal physical damage, and then an AP damage ratio. This applies on hit effects, so think like Lichbane, Bork, Frostfire Gauntlet, Nashor's Tooth. It does not have an AD scaling, so it doesn't matter if you build AD, won't increase that number, just increases off of AP. So what this is you just dash to an enemy. Pretty straightforward ability. One thing you do need to note though is that this ability will always go the full length of the ability. So if I dash when I'm close to him, I'm gonna dash way past them. So if I come up this close and I dash, I'm going all the way through them. So if I dash from the max distance, I'll stop right when I get to them. That's just something you need to keep in mind, because if you're trying to kill someone and you're close to them and you Q through them and they end up, because of the little gap you created, they can flash away and, they get a lot of distance from themselves. Just a little tidbit, something you need to be mindful of when you're playing with Fizz. So Fizz's W has 2 parts. It has a passive as well as an active. The active is just an auto attack reset. The passive is a bleed. It's just a bleed. Think like Darius bleed, Briar bleed, stuff like that. So you auto attack the enemy. Anytime you auto attack or you Q them, you'll start bleeding them. So it'll look like this. Hit them, you get that little bleed effect. And it bleeds them for 3 seconds for an AP ratio over time. And then the auto attack reset, so your active part is auto W them. So what that does is it deals extra on hit damage, and then it has 2 more parts. So if you execute the enemy, so think last hitting it with minions, then you get all the mana from the ability back, and it goes on a 1-second cooldown. So you essentially get the cooldown right back up instead of having to wait the full 6 seconds, 7 seconds at rank 1. And then also it does a little bit extra damage if you don't execute the minion or enemy champion, then you're going to get a little bit extra on hit damage. So right here, boom, we deal, now that we've activated, we deal 69 plus the 13, as opposed to just dealing 69 damage on a regular auto attack. So Fizz's E, one of the coolest abilities in the game, in my opinion, one of the most frustrating to play against, but one of the most satisfying whenever you E over an enemy's ult or one of their like key spells that they use to kill you or CC, and you render it completely useless. It's so fun. So Fizz's E is called Playful Trickster. It's 2 separate dashes, and if you take a look, it has a big AoE range and then a smaller inner ring. The difference between the two is if you stay on your pole longer, you'll get that big splash damage. Now, if you double tap it, you get that inner ring. The difference between those two is if you stay on your pole the whole duration, then you'll get that bigger ring and you'll get a slow, I think it's like a 55% slow or something like that, or 50% for 0.75 seconds, which isn't super long, but it's a noticeable slow. It helps you like stick onto your target. Now, if you double cast it and you come down with that smaller AoE, you will not get that slow, but you will still deal the same amount of damage. So what it'll look like right here is I just E, stay on my pole, bow, come down with the big AoE, and I slow this guy. So the double tap will look something like this. You'll just E, then E again, activate it. You get a much smaller AoE, and you do not get that slow. So just keep that in your mind. If you're wanting to stick onto the target and apply that slow, and it is a very big AoE slow, like that's a big AoE, and it can hit multiple people and slow multiple people. So just kind of keep that in mind whenever you're utilizing Fizz. If you want to stick onto them, you stay the full duration of your E. And if you're wanting to just jump onto someone real quick, try to assassinate them, you throw your full combo, use that double E to jump onto them real fast. So now Fizz's ult is Tame the Waters. This is a pretty cool ability as well with massive range. So it has 3 different ranges. It has a close range, a medium range, and a large range. And what the difference between these 3 is when you do the close range, you're throwing so the closest range is going to throw a small fish. It's going to deal a small knockup and a very small slow. And it just increases the length. So the further you throw it, the bigger knockup, the more damage, and the increased slow that you'll get. So what we'll do is I'll just go ahead and show it to you. So this is a close range fish. I throw it. It's basically point blank. Very small AoE knockup. Doesn't apply much of a slow. So now we'll show you the mid-range one. Throw it out. We get a lot bigger of an AoE. Hits him. Applies a better slow. So now we throw it at the max range. Gets a massive AoE. Knocks him up and applies a slow. And that knockup, where that fish hits, it will hit anyone who's in that AoE. So you could potentially hit multiple people with that ult and deal massive, massive damage. And yeah, so that is the basic rundown of Fizz's abilities. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the combos. We're going to go over basic combos of Fizz all the way from level 1 up into 6, and then combos that you should also be looking for throughout the course of a game. And then also we're going to do a cut after I show you the combo into a real game scenario that I have done myself. So that way you guys can kind of see what it should look like in a real game right beside the practice tool as well. So now what I want to do is I want to go over his basic combos, stuff that you're going to see very often in your own games, what you should implement, and basically what you're going to do on a consistent basis to find success with Fizz. So what I want to do is I want to go over the level 1 trade. So you have 2 options level 1 with Fizz. You can level your W or you can level your E. And it's very situational. So what I like to do is if I'm into a melee matchup where I can actually have pressure and they're hard shoving me in, I will take my W because you can farm under your tower really well with W. And if you get the first 3 minions before your enemy melee champ does, then you can pressure them off the way by auto Wing them and maybe even proccing with another auto, proccing your electrocute or PTA if you're going it. The other scenario is you take E, and what you'll do is you'll wait for the first 3 minions to die, and then you'll E onto the first 3 minions with your slow thing, get all 3 of them, and in the best case scenario, you can also land on your opponent while getting the first 3 minions, hit them with that slow, and then walk them down with 2 autos, get a big electrocute trade. If not, what you can do is you can look for that E auto trade at level 1, 2, even if you miss the minions. So what it'll look like is you'll basically wait for the minions to get low, you'll walk up, hit them with the E, and then you'll walk them down with 2 autos to proc your electrocute. Now you can't do that trade with PTA because with PTA you need 3 auto attacks, and your E auto isn't going to proc PTA, so that's not viable. But I'm going to basically do a cut and show you examples of these trades as well. All right, so now what you want to do is we're going to go over the level 2 trade. So this is a little combo that you can do on people once you hit your level 2. It's not going to be something that you'll do very consistently, but it is something that you can do to whittle your enemy down for your level 3 trade, because once you hit level 3 on Fizz, that's when you actually become a champion. That's when you really start to spike up. So what you can do if you have the opportunity to, and it's very situational, is you basically will just look for an E onto them, hit them with your slow, or you can do a double E too, depending on how close you are to how many minions are around and if it actually benefits you. So the slow E will look something like this. You'll just E, hit them with the auto W, and then you can disengage and run away with the slow from your E, slowing them so they can't follow up. Or you can continue that trade if they're like a weaker champion, like a Vladimir, or I'm trying to think, just a champion that you can abuse basically, or a Lux or a Syndra. If you use your E to dodge their CCs and they don't really have anything else, then you can just walk them down with a couple extra autos. And then what the fast one will look like is something like this. You'll just double E to them, auto W them, and then just run away. Or you can also continue that trade and keep going. So it'll look something like that. All right, so the next trade that you're going to want to look for, and this is your bread and butter trade. This is the trade that you're going to be doing pretty much as soon as you hit level 3. You're going to be looking for this trade over and over. This is how you're going to whittle down your enemies. You can very often get level 3 solo kills, and if not with your level 3, you can do this trade over and over to prep them for level 6 kills. And also, this is a trade you're going to be doing throughout the whole game constantly. So it is your Q auto W trade. You're going to Q to the enemy, auto, and then activate your W. So it'll look something like this. You're going to Q to them, auto W them for that reset. And then what you can do from this point is you still have your E available. So you can continue that trade by E-ing onto them and then walking them down with more autos based off of your slow. So it'll look like this: Q, auto W them, hit them with the slow from your E, and then just walk them down with your enhanced auto attacks. So that's what that looks like. So now what I want to do is I want to show you guys the Q ult animation, how to basically extend the duration or the range of your Q. So with Fizz, you can Q and then cancel your ult animation to it, so it's a lot harder for people to see your ult coming out. And it's just an effective way to extend the range of your ult. So right here, I can't even see this guy because he's so far out of range, right? But what I would just imagine, this is a minion under your tower, and you're farming the wave right here, and this guy's backing right here. Let's say you have a vision over here. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and throw a ward so we can actually have vision of this guy, right? Let's say I've got a ward down here, or for whatever reason you have vision of this guy, and he's backing in plain sight or something. You're under the tower, you're farming minions. You have your level 6. So what you can do is you can run up, Q this, and then throw your ult. So basically, instead of running all the way up here and ulting, you effectively now have an ult range of this. So this whole gap right here, you can hit your ult, hit this guy from this far back by just queuing through that and ulting. And you can do it through jungle camps, you can do it through enemy champions, you can queue through an enemy champion to hit someone else on the backside of that. So once again, I'll just go ahead and show it to you. So I'll act as if I'm running up. I run up, I queue, and then throw my ult out, max range. And you don't always even have to do max range either. You can just you can do it close too and just queue through this thing as fast as possible and then throw your ult out. It's a really, really good trade or technique to use with Fizz. Very important. And yeah, we'll go ahead and show you what that'll look like in a real scenario as well. All right, so now the next thing I want to show you, this is also a pretty standard thing you want to learn on Fizz, because it's basically a way to follow up on a lot of kills, is your E flash. So you can extend your E range as well, your slow E, you hop on your E like that, and you can extend that, because once you get on your E, it really doesn't go that far. But what you can do to extend that and catch you can use this as an engage, to start a fight with someone or to finish a fight with someone as well. So what that'll look like is you're just going to hop on your E, and then you're going to flash while you're in your E animation to your opponent. So it'll look like this: I E and I'll flash on top of them. So basically you're extending your E range whether you want to finish a kill on someone or you want to start a fight just to, you know, I mean, you can E-flash onto them, get a big slow. So let's say multiple enemies are here, right? And you just want to start a fight because your team's super far ahead or whatever it may be. As long as you get that big AoE slow on multiple people, you know that you're going to win that fight. So basically, yeah, you'll just run up, hit them with the E, and then flash on top of them. And what this technique is also really good for, like, finishing kills, because a lot of the times with Fizz's E, it's very telegraphed. So let's say you're working this guy down, I'm auto W him, whatever, Q auto W him, I'm working him down. He knows that he's about to die very soon. So I hop on my E, and he's gonna flash away. I flash follow him with my E. It's a very good technique you need to learn with Fizz. It'll help you secure a lot of kills, help you start a lot of fights, and basically just win you a lot of games. It's a very good, you know, tried and true technique on Fizz. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the basic combos on Fizz. And then so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into just how to play Fizz in general. From my experience, what I think the best way to play Fizz is, the most optimal way if you are tryharding. We're gonna throw some Fizz gameplay in and just kind of go over and show you a couple of examples, and then we will go into the builds, boys. All right, fellas, so now at this point of the video, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over just this is gonna be really quick, just general tips and, you know, keys to playing Fizz. I was gonna put some gameplay in the background, but I figured it'd be distracting, so I just figured I'd write up exactly what I'm thinking and then go over it with you and kind of explain it a little bit more in detail. So overall, I think the best piece of advice I could give you with Fizz is patience. Patience is key. With Fizz, you really have to have a very strong mental, because I would say, like, you know, 7 out of 10 of your matchups in the mid lane, if it's a ranged, like, champion that you're versing, you're going to be getting poked out. You're going to be getting hit with abilities. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be, you know, very frustrating to play against. But in the back of your mind, you have to really just keep a very strong mental and know that you will hit your spikes, and you just have to make it to that point. So, which brings me to my next point right here. Try to stay healthy early levels 1 through 3. It is okay to sack minions early. So it kind of ties into the patience is key. When it comes to, like, range champs, you know, poking you down every time you go for a CS, or even like a tough melee matchup, where you can't really step up forward to, like, hit that CS, like, you know, think of Garen mid, sometimes Renekton mid, or a Pantheon, right? So you really just have to look to play to your strengths. So your levels, you know, 1 through 3 is not that good. Once you hit level 3, you kind of become an actual champion. So once you hit your level 3, then it's really when you want to look to, you know, hit them with those Q auto W trades, go in real quick, then come back out. But definitely I want to stress to you the importance that it is okay to give minions up, you know, give last hits up early in order to stay healthy. So that way, when you do hit your level 3, you do hit your level 6, you're healthy enough to actually go for those trades. So play to your power spikes, i.e. your level 3, your level 6, your first item, you know, I mean, your Lich Bane. Just play very patient. You know, the game isn't on some kind of, like, you know, like, time clock. If you don't get a solo kill within the first 5 minutes, you just lose as Fizz. A lot of people don't think Fizz scales well. I don't think he scales as well as some of the other hyper scaling champions, but he still scales very well. At most parts of the game, you can, you know, once you get your first item, as long as the enemy aren't super far ahead, you're able to one-shot a lot of squishies. So just play to your power spikes, play for your level 3, try to stay healthy. Once you hit your level 3, look for those Q auto W trades if you can. Soften them up for a level 6 kill. You know, repeat the Q auto W trades until they get in kill range. And then once you get level 6, you really turn on as Fizz. You hit them with that long range ult or even a medium ult, and then just hit them with that ignite, Q auto W, and burn them down. So another thing I want to say that's very important, if it's not possible to solo kill your lane opponent, don't just keep ramming your head into a wall trying to, you know, CS against that opponent, or, you know, trying to force a solo kill out of that opponent. You know what I mean? So what you want to do in those cases, you want to play for your jungle or your bot lane. So whether that's skirmishing with your jungle, you know what I mean, after you hit level 3, or, you know what I mean, just playing around your jungler in general, whether he's looking to make a play on Scuttle Crab and, you know that could turn into a little 2v2 fight. That's where Fizz excels. Also in the bot lane ganks, there's nothing stronger in the whole game next to a 4-man, dive on bot lane. So if your jungle ever looks like he's going bot lane, you have a tough lane matchup yourself, you're not able to really look for that solo kill, I definitely would advise looking to group up with your jungler when they head bot and just kind of go down there and try to execute a 4-man dive, or just like I said, look for skirmishes with your jungler. And then another big thing that I don't see enough is buy Dark Seal. Like on your first back, every single game is Fizz, buy a Dark Seal. It only costs 350 gold, and the resale value is insane. It sells for, I'm not sure how much it sells for, but it's like the gold efficiency for selling it, if you end up can't stacking it or whatever, or you're just not having a great game, you still get a lot of that gold back. And for the potential of potentially stacking it up 10 times, you end up getting close to 100 free AP. It's just a no-brainer. If you're playing Fizz on your first back, spend that 350 gold, get that Dark Seal. And then to caveat off of that, if you stack it up, if you get it past, I would say 7 stacks, upgrade it. You need to upgrade that every time if you have the gold. I don't do this enough in my own games just because I don't think about it, or I'm trying to finish an item. But in the games where I do upgrade it and I get over 10 stacks, it makes such a difference because you get that bonus movement speed, and then you also have the potential to stack that up and get, a crazy amount of AP for essentially a 1400 gold item. It's a no-brainer. And then it synergizes really, really well with your Rabadons once you get that. So now what I want to do, boys, is I want to go over my rune pages that I like to go on Fizz. There are a couple variations of them. We're going to keep it very simple for you, though. We're going to do Electrocute and PTA, because these are the two most consistently ones that I go. These are the two that I would recommend beginners as well, that are very, streamlined and easy to pick up. Now, in our advanced guide, I do want to go over some Grass Fizz, some Lethal Tempo Fizz, and maybe even some First Strike Fizz. I want to mess around with that, but I'll have to get more time on it myself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to Electrocute. This is my main route page. This is the rune page that we go, I would say, 80% of the time in mid lane. So what it is, you're going to rock Domination first. You're going to go Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Ingenious Hunter. And now this is kind of personal preference. I like to take the Ingenious Hunter because I like to have my Zhonya's on a very short cooldown. Pretty much anytime you use it on your next fight, your next big skirmish or something, it'll almost always be up. At least that's how it feels like in my games. So what you could swap this out for, and I see a lot of people going this, is Treasure Hunter. So I don't think I've ever run this rune, but I could definitely see why people would run this rune. So if you are very familiar with this rune and you're very comfortable with it, you can easily swap this out and rock the Treasure Hunter, because it is a nice way to get a lot of extra gold. So the only two things that will change on my Electrocute page is I will either go Sorcery secondary, or I'll go Precision secondary. So my Sorcery page will look like this. I will go Mana Flow Band and Transcendence. The Mana Flow Band is basically if you're rushing a Lichbane first item and you're just not using Lichbane, or not Lichbane, but Ludens anymore, then the Mana Flow Band is a good way to give you that mana and mana regen once you fully stack it. And then Transcendence is just another way to give you basically 10 extra ability haste, and then on Champion Takedown, reduce the remaining cooldowns of your basic abilities by 20%, which is massive for Fizz. And then my runes, I like to go attack speed. A lot of people will go the ability haste, and I think that's totally fine, because 8 ability haste is nothing to scoff at. So if you really like ability haste, you can rock this. But I really find that the 10% attack speed helps me get extra autos off in the early fights, and it just makes my auto animation feel a lot more crisp. And then I'll go Adaptive Force, and then I've been just going the Scaling Health rune. So now the only other thing that will change on my Electrocute rune page is I would do Precision secondary. And this is very few and far between. This is if Ludens, more often than not, when Ludens comes back into the play and I don't need the Mana Flow Band, I will run Triumph and Coup de Grace. Now, sometimes if I'm feeling spicy, because a lot of times I don't feel like Coup de Grace really does a whole lot of damage, I'll even go Triumph and Legend of Alacrity. Now, I think these are two interchangeable. Legend of Alacrity is something that you definitely need to be more comfortable with, to have a couple more reps on, but you end up stacking it up to like 18% attack speed. So you'll end up getting 28, close to 30% attack speed with Fizz, which feels really, really, really nice with, your enhanced W auto attacks. So those are my 2 rune pages that I will go the most whenever I'm rocking Electrocute. And now, so what I want to show you is I want to show you my PTA rune page. So for PTA rune page, it will look something like this. It'll look like that. And for PTA, when I go PTA mid or even top, is usually, so whenever I want to go run PTA mid, it's usually into like a Vladimir, Kassadin, or if the enemy team has a melee mid champ, a melee jungle, a melee support, and a melee top. So if they have like 4 melees, more than 3, PTA is just going to be way more valuable. Or if they have a champion that you're just not going to be able to burst with Electrocute, right? So think something like a Garen, maybe a Galio mid would be good too, and they have a melee jungler as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. That's really when you want to run this page. So what we'll do is we'll go PTA, Triumph, Legend of Alacrity for that extra attack speed, Coup de Grace for the extra damage when they're low, and then I'll usually go Domination secondary, and I'll go Sudden Impact to give you that lethality and Magic Pin after you use your Q or your E, and then or your Flash as well, and then I'll go Eyeball Collection to give you that extra ability. And so I will go the attack speed as well. So I'll go attack speed, adaptive, and then scaling health. And yeah, like I said, this is something I'll run in the top lane as well as in the mid lane. It's into very niche matchups, but it definitely has its place on Fizz. All right, fellas, so now what I want to do is I want to go over my 2 main builds that I do with Fizz when I run Electrocute and I play him in the mid lane. So what I would say is the only difference between the 2 is one is basically like a full damage glass cannon magic penetration build, and that would be this. And so how we would run this one is, so I didn't put it on here, but our starting items will always be Doran's until they change, maybe like buff or change some of the starting items. But what I really like to do is Doran's ring, 2 pots, and a ward. And then every single game, no matter what, on my first back, I'm grabbing a Dark Seal, a refill, and boots, if it's possible to buy those. If not, Dark Seal and refillable, and then always boots on my next buy after that. So what I'll do is I'll rush my Lichbane first, and this is going to give you just raw ability power, some movement speed, a little bit of ability haste, but it's giving you that Spellblade passive, which is really, really good. It synergizes with Fizz's abilities so much, and it just gives you such an insane power spike. So then the next item I'll go is Zhonya's Hourglass, and I'll go this every single game, second item, because it's so good, man, on Fizz. Basically allowing you to go in, do your damage, pop your Zhonyas, and if you do it correctly, usually you can come out of your Zhonyas with your E almost up, and so that way you can either E to keep the fight going and like finish the kill, or E out and maybe flash away. Then third item, I'm always going Rabadons, and you know, this is really nice. It just boosts up all your AP from these 2 items, especially with Season 14. Lichbane having 100 AP, and then Zhonya's having 120. And then you get 140 here. That's 360 just raw out the gate. And then you get the plus 35% buff from the Rabadons. It's just, man, you end up having so much raw AP with these 3 item power spike. And then I will always go Magic Pin Boots with this build. And then for my 4th item, I'll go Shadow Flame. And then my last item, I'll go Crypt Bloom. So these 2 are interchangeable. So if you've got your first 3 items and your boots, and the enemy team stacking a lot of magic resist, then just go ahead and grab that Crypt Bloom, because that's going to give you 30% magic pin. It's going to give you some ability power, and then the juicy ability haste, which is nice. That's a nice little icing on the cake. So yeah, this is my build for Fizz mid with Electrocute, running full damage. So the alternate build you can run, and this is both of these are just personal preference. I would say the full damage one for me, I find, is a little bit more successful. But if you're just really reliant on, you know, having that E on the shortest cooldown as possible and being able to, you know, jump in, jump out of the fight, and just get multiple rotations of abilities, then CDR Fizz mid is going to be the build that you're going to want to run. So what that's going to look like is you're going to go Ludens, which is pretty nice because it just recently got a buff. It got 5 more ability power, and then the cost got reduced by 100. So you're only looking at 2,900 as opposed to a 3,100 for a Lichbane first item. And this is going to give you ability power, mana, and ability haste. And it's really nice because you're getting that mana, so you might not have to run mana flow band with this setup. And then your second item, you'll go Lich Bane. That's going to give you an additional amount of haste, still a bunch of raw AP and movement speed. And then your third item, you can go, and honestly, you don't have to go the Zhonya's third item or even second item in this build, but it's just a good way to stay safe and be able to have outplay potential, right? So third item, I'll always go Zhonya's Hourglass with this setup. And then as well, probably before my Zhonya's, I'm grabbing tier 2 boots. I would say I usually will finish my full item, and then I'll go tier 2 boots, unless the gold list lines up to get tier 2 boots before I finish my item. So Zhonya's third item in this setup, and then it's kind of the same thing with this build. Crypto Bloom and Rabadons can, you can go either or here. And honestly, all three of these are interchangeable. Me personally, I like to have the Zhonya's so I can stay safe, but you can go Rabadons before Zhonya's. And then fourth item goes Zhonya's, and then, alternate these. But it's basically all just based off of the game you're playing, right? So if you've got your 3 core items right here, your Ludens, your Lich Bane, and your Ionian boots, and this whole build altogether, I think it rounds you out at like 75 ability haste, and if you go Transcendence, it's close to like 80. So it's actually a lot of ability haste. But yeah, it's just situational. If the enemy team is stacking a lot of MR, then what you want to do is you want to prioritize grabbing that Crypto Bloom. If they're not stacking MR, then just go ahead and go that Rabadon's fourth item. So yeah, these two builds are the builds I would say I'd run 90% of the time. There are some situational items that you can throw in there. So think like a Soul Stealer right here. So you can drop that in there as well if you get your Dark Seal, 10 stacked or even 7 stacked. If you stack that thing up to 7 times and you have the gold, just go ahead and upgrade that, because the snowball potential is out of this world. So definitely keep that in mind as well. The Soul Stealer, your Mage's Soul Stealer, is definitely a huge item you want to be building on Fizz if you have the opportunity to. And then, yeah, from there, I would say there are a couple situational items that you can run on Fizz as well. So if the enemy team has like a whole bunch of, magic dealing champions, you can throw an Abyssal Mask in either one of these builds as well. Just give you a little bit of health, magic resist, and also gives you some ability haste as well. But yeah, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into my PTA builds, and more often than not, I will run that top lane, but there are some niche picks that I will run it into mid lane. So we're just going to jump right over to that. All right, fellas, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our PTA builds. Now, I will more often than not run the PTA build in top lane. I just find it's a little bit more successful. In mid lane, I will run it into very niche matchups, something like a Kassadin or a Vladimir, where Electrocute just isn't going to give me enough early game strength to be able to snowball before those 2 champs can scale up. Also, I'll run it mid lane into like a heavy melee enemy team comp, like if they have a Zed or a Garen Pantheon mid, and then a melee jungle, melee support, melee top, I will run PTA then, because I think the rule of thumb, if you're going to run PTA mid, other than into like a Kassadin or a Vladimir, is if the enemy team, like multiple champions can't be killed with just your Electrocute one-hit combo, and you really need to extend that fight, PTA is always going to be your go-to, because PTA excels in extended trades, because you can proc it with your Q auto W just the same as Electrocute, but then you get extra damage for 6 seconds after that. So just kind of keep that in your mind when you're deciding, should I run PTA into this matchup or not? Top lane, I would say PTA is going to be your go-to more so than Electrocute, unless if the enemy are all full squishy. So if they have like a Jace top lane, and then a squishy jungle, squishy mid, and then like a duo bot lane that are both squishy, then you can run the standard Electrocute build in the top lane. But here's my PTA build. This is what I like to do. I like to rush Liandry's first, and then I'll go Riftmaker second, and so these are kind of interchangeable. So I like to rush Liandry's just because it synergizes so well with Fizz. Now, the only problem with this is, so the PTA build, I will say, suffers from the lack of ability haste. So with Liandry's Torment, you get a bunch of health, a bunch of AP, and then you get that burn for each, I forget how long it burns them, but it burns them for a while, and it synergizes really well with Fizz's W burn anyways. And then for each second in combat with champions, you get increased damage. And with PTA, you're kind of looking for an extended fight. You're not really looking for that Q auto W and then backing off. So then I like to go Riftmaker, and what this does is this does give you a little bit of that much needed ability haste, gives you additional health, additional ability power, and then that extended fight strength as well, because at maximum strength, after you get all the bonus damage, from being in combat with this item, you get Omnivamp. So these two items synergize really, really well with basically the longer you're in the fight, the stronger they get. So then my third item, I'll usually go Gnasher's Tooth, and what this is going to do, it's going to give you attack speed to be able to get those autos off cleaner and more often. It's going to give you a bunch of raw ability power. Oh, so this is I actually grabbed the upgraded version, but yeah, this is just going to be Gnasher's Tooth, not the Baron thing. This is Orin's upgraded version of it. So this should be let's see, this. So we'll take the Baron's gift off of there, boys. So yeah, Gnasher's Tooth is going to give you 90 ability power, 50% attack speed, and 15 ability haste. It's going to give you a little rare passive of applying extra magic damage on hit, which is perfect because that synergizes with Fizz W super, super well. Now, what I like to do is I like to tank up after that, mainly because you want to be able to stay in the fight, right, with PTA Fizz. You want to be able to be healthy and tanky enough to get those autos off, to use your abilities, and just keep on going. So what I like to do is I like to go Abyssal Mask. What this is going to do, it's going to give you some health, going to give you magic resist and ability haste. And it's giving you a really nice, unique passive where it reduces enemy champions nearby you, their magic resist. And then you also gain magic resist as well. So it's super cheap. If you're going up against AP champ in the top lane, you could even argue to rush this item with PTA. You could rush this and then go into your Leandre second. So now the opposite side of that is if you're up against an AD champ, especially like a champ that is going to be utilizing attack speed very heavily, you want to rock the Frozen Heart. It's very, very cheap, gives you a lot of armor, gives you mana, because that is one thing that you're going to need with the PTA build, is you're going to need some mana. And then it gives you ability haste as well, which we all know we need with this. And then I, more often than not, will like to rock the Ionian boots here because it gives you a little bit of extra cooldown reduction, which you need. But the boots are very interchangeable. If you're up against an enemy team comp where they have 4 AD, just go ahead and rock Ninja Tab. It's just going to be way better. If they have 4 AP champs or a bunch of champs with CC, then just go ahead and slap on some Merc Treads. So with the PTA build, it's very interchangeable. Your boots, if you can afford to go the cooldown boots, probably the best, but it's just situational. The ability to adapt in League is like one of the biggest things. So just, build your boots accordingly. So this is my standard build. Now, a lot of these items can be swapped out with the situationals I put down here. So the Frozen Fist gives you a bunch of health and armor and ability haste. Plus, it allows you to build a Sheen, which synergizes really well with Fizz. So if you're not up against a heavy like auto attack dealing, damage dealing champion, so if you're not up against like a Tryndamere, like a Briar top, or an Irelia Yasuo, if you're up against like kind of an AD champ, but they're more ability based than anything, then you can afford to go the Frozen Fist. This is going to give you the extra health. It's going to give you just a little bit less armor, but it's going to give you more ability haste. 25 ability haste, which is really, really nice. That extra 5 ability haste. So altogether, this standard build will give you 20 plus 10, that's 30, plus an additional 15, that's 45, plus 15, that's 60, and then 75 here. So you get a pretty solid amount of ability haste out of this. So yeah, if you're going up against, it's just kind of like what champions are you up against, right? And that's where you'll swap these out. And then also you can go Jack Show. This is also the upgraded version of it. This is Orin's upgraded. So you'll just go Jack Show, not this Protoian. Jack Show is basically going to give you health, armor, and magic resist. And it's also going to give you, the longer you're in combat, it's going to give you more resistances. And I think some tenacity as well. So yeah, you could throw this in place of one of these two items, just to kind of get you the best of both worlds. You get health, armor, and magic resist. So also the Zhonya's, if you're up against a full enemy, AD team comp, if all 5 of the enemy champs are AD, then instead of going this Abyssal Mask, you can just slap that Zhonya's on there. It's going to give you a little bit more AP, as well as that stasis effect, as well as still giving you armor. Now, if you're snowballing, this build is the exact same as my other builds. On my second back, I will always get a Dark Seal every single game. Dark Seal on my first back. And if I get that thing stacked up, I'm gonna probably upgrade it into a Soul Stealer. And then if I'm just snowballing out of control and I've got like my Leandres and I've got a Soul Stealer, then I will potentially just go Rabadons. It's just all based on your, on the situation of the game. Same thing for this is the Wits End. It can synergize really, really well. So if they have like a full AP team comp or even 4 AP champs, then you can get rid of the Frozen Heart and just go ahead and build a Wits End. The Wits End is going to give you a lot of attack speed, 50 magic resist, a bunch of tenacity, and it's going to give you another on-hit effect. So you stack that on-hit effect with your Nashor's Tooth, and then just all your ramping damage from these two, and you just turn into an auto attack, massacre. And you shred towers with the PTA build. It's so good with the Nashor's Tooth. But yeah, fellas, that is my full complete Fizz beginner guides update, all the way from his combos, his champion identity, general how to play with him, runes, and build pass based off of the 2 rune pages that I showed you. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hopefully this video gave you some sort of knowledge that you can take into the Rift and become successful with yourself. And yeah, if you made it this far in the video, I really do appreciate you watching it. And if you enjoyed it, drop a like. If you're enjoying my content, I really do ask you to consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps build our community so much, and it really, really does help out with the YouTube algorithm as well. Helps push our content out to other people. And yeah, stick around for the next video.